on Famagusta. Mr. David Burrowes. Mr. David Burrowes to move the motion.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the motion as on the order paper relating to Famagusta.
Order. Members in this chamber are being exceedingly discourteous to the gentleman who is trying to move a motion. Mr. Burrowes.
Massacre in Paris is rightly dominating public and parliamentary attention today. So the question may be asked, why is a motion about Cyprus being debated today? I could, though, use a phrase commonly used by many of my Cypriot constituents. Why not? In fact, Cypriots have been asking the question, why not, for over 40 years, following the occupation and division of Cyprus in 1974. Why not justice for Cyprus? Other divided and occupied countries have seen freedoms over those 40 or so years, but Cyprus remains one of the longest-running unresolved issues in British foreign policy. This issue matters to my constituents because I represent the most Cypriots, both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, together in the world. Whilst I'm proud of representing so many constituents, it is a sad statistic because it is the only place in the world that has so many, both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots in such numbers, living freely side by side, working, socialising and trading together. In my constituents we have Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots being together along green lanes, but in Cyprus there's Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots divided by the Green Line. Cyprus also remains one of the most militarised places per head of population anywhere in the world. And when we think of current conflicts around the world, that is an extraordinary statistic. When one notes the tens of thousands of Turkish troops in the north of Cyprus, we have to ask ourselves, why is this continuing day after day, year after year? And we say this when we know that Cyprus is a member of the European Union, which is tragically and intolerably divided and occupied. Hence the context of this motion before the House today. And why before this particular House of Parliament? Well, as we know, Britain has a significant historical interest in Cyprus. It has a legal interest as one of the guarantor powers and has a more obvious, indeed in recent months and days, obvious strategic interest, given Cyprus's location in that troubled region, and indeed it's home to those sovereign base areas where we see its particular relevance to the wider world, but also we know where the RAF tornadoes are there conducting operations and maybe further to come. And please give way.
Congratulate him on bringing forward this important debate. He's mentioned Gale and Akrotiri as the sovereign base areas, and he will know that previous Cypriot governments, if not the current one, are very keen to get their hands on those sovereign base areas. To what extent does he think that attention is taken from those areas by the conflict currently between the Turkish and Cypriot sides? And once that is resolved, which I hope it is soon, does he fear perhaps attention may refocus on Gale and Akrotiri?
Yes, I can talk with some interest, and it's something I should declare an interest with the Conservative Friends of Cyprus, recently visiting Cyprus, indeed returning just at the weekend, that we have a Conservative President Anastasiades, who is taking a very sensible view in relation to the sovereign base areas. And indeed, recently, one important agreement that was reached with the British government was in terms of appropriate property development to support Cyprus in its road to economic recovery. It shows a very pragmatic and appropriate use of those base areas, and also a keen understanding about the ongoing strategic interest of those base areas and for wider security in the region. So I think Cyprus is in good hands, and together with hopefully that comprehensive settlement that we all seek to have resolved, that together with that ongoing strategic interest we have, together Cyprus can be a beacon to other nations, working together and providing that stability that that region does so need. This House has been used to a number of debates around Cyprus, many secured by me and indeed honourable members that I can see across the House as well. But what makes this particular debate different is that we have a substantive motion, for which I want to thank the Backbench Business Committee for agreeing to. And the reason for this motion is, in many ways, the basis of it is public support, based upon a petition signed by 50,000 Greek and Turkish Cypriots, which was presented to the Prime Minister back indeed in 2012. It follows up the declaration of the European Parliament of 14th February 2012, calling for the return of Famagusta. So if such a motion can be good for the European Parliament, it can certainly be good for our British Parliament. We often say that our debates are timely in this place. Well, they certainly are when it comes to this particular motion before the House. Not just because I, along with 6 other honourable friends who are here today, have just returned from a recent visit with the Conservative Friends of Cyprus, but also because the 2 leaders of Cyprus are undertaking an intense period of negotiations this month to reach a settlement to the Cyprus problem. Our meetings with both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots revealed an encouraging, positive approach to the talks. Indeed, Ambassador Andreas Mavrianis, the Greek Cypriot negotiator, described it as the best chance ever, and very pertinently that if we don't succeed now, we may never succeed. Indeed, this echoes the remarks from the Foreign Secretary a couple of months ago, who also has great timing because he'll be visiting, as I understand, Cyprus on Thursday. And he said that the stars are optimistically aligned to create the chance for settlement, the like of which we've not seen in decades. So I look forward to the Minister, on behalf of the House and indeed the Government, affirming the Government's support for the comprehensive settlement, and that we need this as soon as possible. But why the particular attention on Famagusta in this motion? Well, the reason is all too clear. It's all too clear indeed it was to honourable friends who were there just on Saturday, who saw for themselves, as I saw, very visibly on the beach there at Famagusta, the fenced-off area of Famagusta Burrowes. A fenced-off area that, yes, I do give way to my honourable friend.
I have to declare an interest as well, because I accompanied my honourable friend recently on the trip to Cyprus. And Famagusta has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world and would play a strong part in the economy. I know this because my constituency of South East Cornwall also has some beautiful beaches. But would he join me in encouraging both sides to come to an agreement so that we don't see these beaches divided by what is a dreadful barrier, with part of that town being a ghost town?
My honourable friend speaks with some expertise also in relation to the issue of tourism and beautiful coastlines that benefit from tourism, and how important it is that Famagusta, which 53% of tourism of Cyprus was generated in Famagusta, and now it's, as it's referred to often sadly, as a ghost town of Famagusta, which is in sharp contrast, which was the jewel of the Mediterranean. And every day that Famagusta is as it is a day of injustice. And that's why we must not let it be tolerated. And whilst we appropriately recognise and support the comprehensive settlement, Famagusta and its return is a key element in facilitating that comprehensive settlement. I do give way.
Honourable friend for securing the debate, because I know how hard he fights for his Cypriot constituents, whether it's of Turkish or Greek heritage. But does he agree with me that Famagusta is a visible reminder that Cyprus is the only EU country occupied, and occupied by a foreign power, which is Turkey, and we cannot allow Turkey to accede to the EU until they withdraw from Cyprus?
I've been a champion of these causes over a number of years, and it is indeed there's Famagustians in the public gallery who acutely are aware of that very fact, and they, along with 40,000, fled their town, and they will also recognise not only have they lost their town, they've lost their freedom, they've lost their justice, but like we all do, recognise this is a scar on Europe, and it's a scar that must be sorted out, and sooner rather than later. It is that visible reality of a divided, occupied island. But what it also offers the hope and opportunity for is providing a credibility for a settlement. And that's important, and it's something that's recognised by all communities who formed the basis for the motion by signing that petition, because they together recognise the importance of this important act of justice. They themselves have called for called for the two UN Security Council resolutions 550 and 780 to be properly fulfilled, and sadly Turkey has ignored. And I have been inviting the Minister to be letting know what steps have been taken to ensure that we get that cooperation from Turkey, because we must see that cooperation to ensure that this comprehensive settlement is truly credible and has a reality. Britain has a key role to play in securing that cooperation, in providing that assurance, that safety, that security that everyone wants. But the return of Famagusta has been described during our visit as a game changer. Before I go on to describe why, I do give way to a neighbouring.
Could I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way and congratulate him on, and colleagues for securing this debate? And also, does he agree with me that there is a lot of cross-party support on these benches for a deal, and that we may indeed be seeing the very moment where we could see both sides coming together, extending the arm of friendship and having a lot of support in the region for that particular settlement? Does he also agree that it's a good thing to see that the Cabinet Secretary's been visited Cyprus recently, twice indeed in the last 12 months? I think that's a positive step as well.
Very good. These are all very positive steps, and what is wanted also is to provide a reality to the agreement. There has been agreement between leaders in the past that hasn't then met with the approval of the public across both sides, and we want to ensure there's a reality to that. And one key way is Famagusta. I can't get away from Famagusta because that's the subject of this motion, and it matters because what we will have from opening up the ports under Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot, under their implementation, run jointly by them, under supervision of the EU or UN, and that would dramatically help financially support a reunited Cyprus. How do you give way? Yes.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. As the co-chair of the Northern Turkish Republic of Cyprus, I've just come back from a visit with some other members, and whilst we were in North Cyprus, we met with the President, Mr. Akinci, and other politicians and the Prime Minister and everyone, and they seem to be very optimistic that a deal and a settlement will be done very shortly. And we also met the British Ambassador in Cyprus as well, where these matters were discussed. And I think, as I understand it, the issue of Arosha is very much part of the discussions that are taking place. And I sense from my discussion there that they were hoping that very much, not later but sooner, there will be some kind of settlement taking place. Sorry.
The lady has plenty of opportunity to make a speech later. Her benches are not overpopulated, but really it's bad form to make a very long intervention. Mr. Burrowes.
I'm grateful for that intervention, and she makes a point where there is, across both Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, as we heard ourselves in our visit, there is real positivity. I've been on many visits before, but this is a time where there is real positive support. Mr. Kinji and President Anastasiades together are making good progress, and we need to wish them all the very best in those endeavours. I think it's also important, though, that we see the role of Turkey in this whole situation, the need for proper cooperation. And that's why the opening up of the ports in relation to Turkey is good, because what it would mean is if they properly remove, obviously, the troops from the island, and also properly recognise what is important, which is the Ankara Protocol and the Customs Union, which would come out of the opening up of the port of Famagusta, that would allow proper recognition of free movement of goods and trade, and that would then remove obstacles for Turkey's path to accession to the European Union. And these are all important aspects to a proper comprehensive settlement that does provide reassurance. I look forward, though, and before I do, I look forward to another intervention from my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend. When we went, we saw churches desecrated and graves robbed. And does he not think that a settlement would help the people of Cyprus to rebuild their religious tolerance and understanding over all the communities on the island?
And then there's much sadness around what is a beautiful island. and that is why they're humanitarian issues, such as the issue of religious and cultural destruction, such as may well be mentioned in the debate, the issue around missing persons and finding truth for those loved ones who still don't know information about their missing relatives. These are humanitarian issues, as well as Famagusta is a humanitarian issue that demands all our attention and demands justice. So I look forward to the Minister, in response, indicating the government's support for this motion, because what he would have, as he indicates this support, he doesn't need to be too bold, because he would have the backing of the Prime Minister in giving that support, who on 29th of June 2012 wrote to me about the petition which referenced what is in effect the motion before the House. He said, "We fully agree with the principle behind it, that measures to build confidence between the communities in Cyprus can have great value in facilitating efforts towards a comprehensive settlement. We fully support all the relevant security resolutions, including UN Security Resolution 550 and 789. So there's the Prime Minister's backing already, and the Minister just needs to say he agrees with the Prime Minister and will support this motion. Time is short, and Speaker, there are the other members who wish to contribute to this debate. And I will leave it to others to mention what are a number of issues that go perhaps beyond this motion with the leave of the Deputy Speaker. But I will, as I left Cyprus along with many of my honourable friends over the weekend, we may well have, as a lot of people do when they go to Cyprus on a tourist destination, they leave with souvenirs, they maybe leave with their duty-free, they maybe even try to leave with tortoises. But I have a shopping list of questions for the Prime Minister, which I wish to raise here. On Famagusta, will the government support access to experts to Burrowes to assess the damage and requirements for restoration and regeneration? Because if we're serious about the return of Famagusta and a comprehensive settlement, we should be serious about getting experts in there now. On the settlement, in relation to our guarantor powers, will Britain indicate that external countries' guarantees have no future following a comprehensive settlement? Does the government stand ready to help following negotiations where there may be intractable issues for settlement which require Turkish cooperation? On missing persons, where there has indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, been really good progress, bi-communal progress, the Committee for Missing Persons is an exemplar in providing support in areas of conflict which go across the world, in fact, in working with not only committees directing it, but also lab technicians from both communities, carrying out painstaking work to find information and DNA to link with missing persons. There's going to be good recent news. The Turkish army have provided access, they're going to provide access for 30 military bases over the next 3 years to provide important information. But will the government go further and continue to ask the Turkish government to provide information which is still kept in those archives to allow those missing relatives who come every July to rally here in Parliament? Can we provide them with information through Turkey about their loved ones who have information in those archives? Madam Speaker, I don't propose to spend too much longer because I appreciate there are others speak, but in conclusion, this is a motion which is a historic motion, because what it does, it sets clearly not just a general debate, it says very clearly, crystal clear, that we stand full square behind a comprehensive settlement that is good for Cyprus, that is good for the region, and is good for Britain. And the way we can do that and provide real reality to it is to provide justice for Famagusta and to return Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants. I beg to move.
Dr. Matthew Offord.
Deputy Speaker, I want to start by congratulating my honourable friend for Enfield Southgate for securing this debate. As he said, this is an extremely timely debate, as 6 colleagues and myself travelled to the divided island of Cyprus just last week. It wasn't my first visit to the country, and indeed it wasn't the first time that I had actually crossed the border and gone into the occupied territory, but it was my first time I've had the opportunity to travel to Famagusta. I could speak about many issues that were raised during that trip, be it the Committee on Missing Persons, people found very moving, or indeed stolen artefacts, or access to property, or indeed land. But I'm going to focus on just 2 areas. I want to make 2 points during this debate this evening. Firstly, I want to just mention the observation I have of a situation which I found truly inexplicable on the island. And secondly, I want to talk about the effect of the huge military presence in the occupied zone. The first issue I want to raise is the beaches, particularly at Famagusta. To witness what I can only describe as a ghost town frozen in time. that is Famagusta would be interesting if it didn't affect so many people in the here and now today. In fact, there's many people who are not able to visit graves of their relatives and friends. They're not able to access their properties or businesses, or even visit their beach, their own beach, without harassment.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the subject of visiting graves, there are 371 mainly conscripts from this country buried in Wayne's Keep that we must make sure we have access to and look after that graveyard. And these men were killed mainly by Greek Cypriot terrorist fighters, and we must not forget that.
I thank the honourable member for that intervention, and indeed he is correct. And in fact, as the record shows, I've asked parliamentary questions upon this issue because we indeed have our own graves in that country. And while I'm not going to open a debate upon the historical aspects of the island, we realise there's many sides to all the stories that we can tell. But we are very concerned about the graves of all people on the island, be it Turkish Cypriots or indeed Greek Cypriots or indeed British service personnel who died and were buried on the island. But as I was saying, there are such people that I can certainly name in this debate. These aren't people I've plucked out of the air, but people such as Maria, who was a regular visitor to the beach, or Antonius, who's denied access to his grandfather's property, or even Consus, who's unable to visit the King George Hotel where his father worked for over 30 years. These are all real people with stories to tell, Madam Deputy Speaker. But because of the behaviour of the authorities that we experienced, I'm not going to reveal their surnames because I feel there'd be further repercussions against those people. But what I found striking about visiting Famagusta was not just the hundreds of residential and commercial properties that lie empty, but the simple access to the beach. I think this is something that the members for the Gower, Cleethorpes and South East Cornwall can all relate to, having coastal constituencies. Walking along the sand in Famagusta means that you have to enter a contested area alongside the overbearing corrugated iron and barbed wire fences which enclose the tower blocks that surround the beach, giving it a sense of a militarised zone. This barrier extends across and alongside the beach until it meets the curvature of the water's edge and then enters the sea, preventing anyone from moving along the coast. Both this and the mines in the sea ensure that there are no access. And for someone who grew up on the beach, literally, I find that really difficult to explain. But even if someone could navigate this military presence in the watchtower, someone will come out and shout at you to get away from the fence and certainly not to take any pictures. Now, I wonder if the Turkish authorities are embarrassed by that sight, and I leave it to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and indeed other members of the Chamber to decide if that is so. But I certainly think that it is. Then, the Turkish authorities, I believe, in an attempt to intimidate us even further, had a presence on the beach of another security personnel, quite a peculiar person in his own shorts and his comb-over long grey hair, who would march around the beach at a great pace, walking closely to us to intimidate and decide to see what we were doing, and all the time having an earpiece in his ear where we could hear the Turkish border guard shouting at him at the top of their voices. And it was one of the most peculiar scenes I've ever seen in my life. But it's not just the physical environment in Famagusta that has been physically manipulated by the Turkish forces, but also the number of people who have been relocated from mainland Turkey, the settlers known as the Turkayeli. Northern Cyprus' first official census, performed in 1996, showed that there were over 200,000 people in the occupied territory. A decade later, this has increased by another £65,000. A third census was carried out by the UN in 2011, and this showed a population of over 294,000. But these results have been disputed by many political parties, trade unions, and indeed local newspapers and associations of undercounting the population, because the TNRC had previously said to Turkey that there are over 700,000 people in the occupied territory in order to gain access to greater numbers of funds. But what we do know as a fact, that over 50% of these people that come from the mainland have no common heritage or culture with the indigenous Turkish or indeed Cypriot people. I often hear in this chamber, and I'm sure the Minister has heard me say it to him many times, that we hear about the settlements in Israel and how they're illegal under the international law. I'm sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll be glad to hear that I won't be opening up that debate. But I never hear criticism of Turkey for doing the same thing, for its actions are a clear breach of the 4th Geneva Convention. Article 49 makes it clear that an occupying power may not forcibly deport protected persons or deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into occupied territory. Turkey has done this. Turkey has clearly breached this convention, and there can be no dispute that immigration to the occupied territory is unlawful. What is not disputed is the number of Turkish troops in the north. In 2013, the Cyprus Centre for Strategic Studies estimated there were 74,000 troops in the occupied territory of Cyprus, in an area of 1,295 square miles. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, if we put that into context of the UK, in April we had 87,060 army service personnel, and we have a landmass of 83,700 square miles. The comparison is obvious and illustrates Turkey's determination in Cyprus in maintaining its military presence. And indeed, on Saturday, we witnessed the over-the-top display of soldiers, trucks and howitzers as traffic was stopped to allow army personnel to travel through Famagusta. It was clear that this was purely a public display of such weaponry due to design little more than intimidate the indigenous Turkish and Cypriot population, not to seek the removal of the Turkish army in the occupied territory. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the European Parliament has repeatedly voiced its support for the return of Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants. The resettlement of Arusha and Famagusta on the basis of the UN Security Council resolutions will have a positive effect for a comprehensive, viable solution to the Cyprus problem, as it will create a tangible example of cooperation and coexistence between Greek and Turkish Cypriots on the island, and serve as a symbol of future harmony and prosperity. Famagusta may be a forbidden occupied town in Cyprus, but it will never be a forgotten community by its lawful inhabitants and the friends it has in this place. Thank you.
Sir David Amess.
I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this debate, and I congratulate my honourable friend on his brilliant leadership of the recent delegation of which I was privileged to be a member of. And I should tell the House that I found none of my colleagues disagreeable on this trip. I should also say my honourable friend, the member for Enfield Southgate, exhibited true leadership skills. And I would say to him that if ever an honourable friend were fit for office, he is. I'm also delighted to see my honourable friend, the Minister, the member for Bournemouth East, is going to be responding to this debate, because I know him well. And he isn't a minister who will respond with a lot of waffle. I anticipate that he's going to agree with everything that has been said during this debate. And given the fact that, as I understand it, the Foreign Secretary will be visiting Cyprus in a short while, the timing of this debate couldn't be better. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, when I first became a Member of Parliament, I was taken to the island of Cyprus. I have no constituency interest at all. Very few Cypriots, whether they be Greek or Turkish, live in my constituency. But I just couldn't believe, visiting the island, this tiny island, that it was divided by a green line. And as far as Famagusta is concerned, which this debate is really focusing on, I can best liken it to Great Expectations and Miss Havisham. It's very much like a time warp, and it is very distressing when you visit this area to see these buildings which have stood empty and decaying since 1974, which is an absolute disgrace. And Madam Deputy Speaker, when we started on the visit, I was very, very cynical about the prospects of a settlement, because I'd heard it all before. As we all know, there's no problem between Cypriots, whether they live on the north or south side. It's when the two mother countries start to intervene that it becomes challenging. But I have to say to the House that I was so impressed with the meetings that we had, particularly with what the acting president had to say and what the negotiator had to say, that I really think that it will be the last time any British parliamentary group will be visiting the island when it's still divided. I am very optimistic that in 2 or 3 months' time we will at long last see a united Ireland. So I congratulate my honourable friend again for his timing of our trip. Now, we could go back, Madam Deputy Speaker, to 1974 and say it was a disaster which should never have happened. We can often be wise after the events. It is a tragedy, really, that it happened then and that all these years later it hasn't been solved. But I've decided it's no good going on about the past. I've got to draw a line underneath it, as Cypriots on both sides have decided to do. And I was very pleased that on the 18th of September this year, our Prime Minister met with the Greek Cypriot President, and there was a general meeting of minds of the issue. I believe that there is a need for Turkey to send specific signals through specific actions that would enhance the ongoing settlement process. Now, the recent election of the new leader on the northern side is widely seen as something that has significantly increased the prospects of a solution.
Does my honourable friend agree with me that this also presents the opportunity for the missing persons perhaps to be located and identified, having seen for ourselves the bones that were seemingly strewn across tables and being sorted in the anthropological laboratory of both Greek and Cypriot persons? This should be something that is a priority for both sides to come together so that those who did lose loved ones can lay them to rest.
I absolutely am going to agree with my honourable friend. I'm just going to come to that point in a minute because I hadn't seen the detail of the DNA testing that was going on with the bones. I just want to come back to the election of the new leader. His first act on assuming office was to abolish the entry visa for visitors to northern Cyprus, something that had long angered Greek Cypriots, and I think that's a very, very positive move. Of course, there are obstacles to overcome, such as governance, security, territory, and as my two honourable friends have already mentioned, refugees. However, if relations continue to be positive, and they certainly seem to be positive, I'm optimistic that with the support of the UK, our support, we were told over and over again, was absolutely crucial, there can be a fairly swift unification in 2 to 3 months. The potential impact of the term of Famagusta on Greek Cypriots, you can't overestimate it. It would be very, very significant indeed. The term of Famagusta will be an enormous confidence builder for Greek Cypriots, and I believe that it is an important humanitarian move which will allow the return of 40,000 to their homes. Now, coming on to the point that my honourable friend said about missing persons, I don't know if one of my honourable friends want to intervene, but I think it's about 1,500 Greek Cypriots missing, about 500 Turkish Cypriots missing. Now, I think we were all shocked at the detail of the work that goes into tracing these missing people. And when we were taken into the laboratories, if we had had a loved one whose bones were somewhere in the room, I think it would have been too overwhelming for us. We could manage to step back because we didn't actually know any of the people. But I had no idea of the detail that went on, the forensic detail that went on. And the House should know this is a very, very expensive operation. And I know the Department for International Development is stretched on this issue, but if there is anyone who could perhaps lend some financial support, it would mean a great deal to all those concerned.
One of the encouraging time when everyone visits is actually looking at the work done by the Bicommunal Committee on Missing Persons. Given that the laboratory which we actually visited ourselves is on British land, and I understand there's been some in-kind support with a vehicle and so forth, it's encouraging that the Foreign Secretary is going to be visiting that laboratory, and it would be good for him to see how we can, whether in-kind or actually, provide as much financial support as necessary to help support the information that these missing persons, these relatives need.
My honourable friend makes a wonderful point, and he's absolutely right about the timing of the visit. So I do hope, though, that although it was explained to us we'll never find all the missing persons, it would mean so much if we could continue with the work for the foreseeable future. And
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking as someone that's the chairman of Remembering Srebrenica and all the work that goes on into tracing people in Srebrenica, it is not that difficult if you can get the DNA off a bone and people who are close relatives have their DNA taken. There's two parts to it, and that can be done quite quickly underneath the United Nations.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, but I think as was explained to us a difficulty that some of the burial grounds are now under multi-storey buildings. They're under housing developments. It really perhaps isn't quite such a straightforward issue.
Grateful for the honourable member giving way. Can I also remind him it's not just where the bones are actually located. Some have been dispersed by wild animals, some indeed have been washed away, and those that have been bleached by the sun often lose their DNA.
My honourable friend reminds me of that specific point, and I think to summarise on this issue, the experts are doing a fantastic job, but there is a limit to how far they can go on this. And to touch on the other issue that my honourable friend for Hendon mentioned, in terms of the graves, I was shocked and horrified when we visited the graves to see the Greek Cypriot graves absolutely vandalised, crosses broken up, everything dug up to see if there were any riches there like the Egyptians used to have, and yet the Turkish graves right opposite were kept in magnificent order. And this is all done through European Union funding. An absolute scandal and an insult. And I do think the House really would be well directed to find out more information about this, because this is an issue. I know my honourable friend, the member for Enfield Southgate, tried to get a group of volunteers to go over there to do something about the graves. But this is a relatively small matter which, with will, could be put right very, very quickly. But the lady who took us to see where her loved ones were buried, I mean, she broke down in our arms, and my honourable friend comforted her.
Does my honourable friend also agree with me that it's not only the graveyards but the churches that have been destroyed? And it's all, in my opinion, part of the oppression of people, and really something should be done to rectify this.
Absolutely. I mean, to see one of the churches turned into a stable, how insulting the whole thing was. And if only we'd have had the Archbishop or his deputy visiting with us on those particular trips, it would have made it even better. So, in conclusion, I do think we could do something as far as the graves were concerned. I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we need to endorse the Foreign and Commonwealth's mission, which is we work with Cyprus to implement policy on Europe and the single market, building trade for mutual growth. We support all parties in finding a comprehensive settlement in Cyprus and work together to beat international crime and threats to British and international security. I would like to commend the Cypriot President for all his efforts in the unification of Cyprus, and if all goes well, the island could be a wonderful model of how coexistence could be between Muslims and Christians. Cyprus now has a real opportunity to reach an agreement, and that would be a wonderful thing for Europe and the world.
Catherine West.
Madam Deputy Speaker. I've not been to Cyprus, and it sounds as though I might have missed a really fun trip, actually. It sounds as though you've all had a really positive experience in the last couple of weeks. But what I... Of course.
I have to say to the Honourable Lady that it wasn't fun to see graves destroyed and to meet people and go to beaches where there's a great big barrier down the middle. It wasn't certainly a fun trip, I don't think, for either myself or any of our colleagues.
Well, could I thank the Honourable Lady for that clarification? But I suppose one could feel a little excluded if one was listening and not having visited with the group. Because the thing is that this question, there is no division between a particular this should be an all-party parliamentary thing, because there is no division on the fact that we all want to see the same thing. But one can't help but feel a little left out with some of the debate this evening. Let me get back, if I could, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the Cypriots in my community. The contribution that the Cypriot community, both Turkish speakers and Greek speakers, have made to business, to government, to local government, to catering, to IT facilities and services, to our diet in Haringey, where the Mediterranean diet and the arrival of fresh fruit and veg into our high streets began the whole revolution towards a healthy way of life, moving away from just the staple of fish and chips into wonderful vegetables, olive oil and so on. And I note that the Right Honourable Gentleman who began this debate and had the idea and sought the support for it will agree that we are so enriched in North London because of what the Cypriots brought us in terms of that diet in the 1970s and onwards. But on a more serious note, the Right Honourable Lady is quite right to say just how much suffering there has been in Cyprus, and I believe that there's been suffering on both sides. And older Cypriots have said to me how much they wish to see, before the end of their lives, some kind of hopeful conclusion to what really for their lives has been a terrible experience. And they want to see that for their children, for their grandchildren, and they want to see themselves do it, not just pass away knowing that at some point it will happen, but they want to see it before they actually pass on. And so we do have these sticking points, and Famagusta is one of them, and so are land disputes, because we got close to a settlement, you know, two decades ago, but unfortunately... Yes.
Taking the intervention. Would you agree with me that certainly during our visit there last week, one of the important features that came out of it was the fact that the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots actually do want to live together, and they're quite happy to live together. It's the issue of Turkey, that the Turkish government, that stops it at the moment.
That intervention, and certainly both my Turkish-speaking and my Greek-speaking friends, colleagues in the borough of Haringey are always talking about Cyprus, the place of. And we are the friends of Cyprus, the place of. And so I think it is important always to remember that togetherness and the fact that it's the formalities. Now we need to bring the formalities together. Now we need to have the cabinet secretaries. Now we need to live up to the reality, which I believe we can do.
And she's emphasising this is a cross-party motion supported across the House and very much over the years as cross-party support from Friends of Cyprus. Isn't, as you know, because we share with neighbouring constituents, that Cypriots will work together and agree on lots, but on Cyprus they will not necessarily agree, Turkish and Greek Cypriots. But on this particular issue, on Famagusta, quite uniquely in many ways, we have had Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots signing petitions and coming together saying this is a really good confidence-building measure that can really facilitate a comprehensive settlement. That is a particular point that we need to keep emphasising and encourage support for.
That's right, and I think what we have to do really is to show a huge swell of support, which it's impossible perhaps for other governments to ignore, so that it becomes the most important thing is Cyprus itself. And we give the example to other regional governments that they have to therefore support. the other thing that, Madam Deputy Speaker, I just wanted to conclude with was just the fact that we mustn't allow the disagreements that there have been in the past, and I mentioned this briefly, it's just around the land, and we must really bottom that one out, because we wouldn't want to get close to a settlement without having bottomed that out. And I do hope that we can assist with the friends that we do have, and I can see other right honourable friends who have come here this evening to speak as well. And I know that my right honourable friend Alan Meal has also been key in working with colleagues across the for many years on the environment and other questions. And I hope that as a new Member of Parliament, with a commitment to the place of Cyprus, I can now join the table. And I'm very pleased to see that there's one other right honourable lady in our midst as well, because my experience of some of my meetings to date with right honourable friends has been quite lonely. So I look forward to seeing her at future events to talk about the unification of Cyprus. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me first say to the honourable lady that I believe I'm right in saying that the baton of the chairmanship of the all-party group has been smartly passed from my honourable friend, the member for Enfield, to me. And either I or her honourable friend, the member for Mansfield, will certainly make sure that she gets the chance to see for herself, because some colleagues have seen the Berlin Wall. Not everybody has seen the Green Line in Cyprus. And the idea that right through the centre of one of Europe's major cities there is a barricade, there is several yards of barren land, buildings going back to 1974 when everything stopped, 1974 cars in the car showroom, meals still on the table, change still on the table, is quite extraordinary. And I think unless colleagues have seen it for themselves, they actually don't understand how desperate this is. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's quite wrong, isn't it, that since 1974, since the Turkish invasion of the northern part of Cyprus, a member state now of the European Union, Cyprus, has been occupied by an aspirant member state of the European Union, Turkey. And successive attempts to resolve the problems have failed. Not as has been said, because Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots don't get along together. They do, by and large. Well, as much as anybody else does. And they live happily side by side. And there was a time, a generation and a half ago, when Greek Cypriots spoke Turkish and Turkish Cypriots spoke Greek. And they used the same bars and the same cafes and the same coffee bars. And they played sport together. And they coexisted in harmony, in the same villages. A generation and a half down the line, that's beginning to change, sadly, because now there is a generation of children, some of the children of Turkish settlers, some the children of Greek Cypriots, who've never known the other side, who've never spoken Turkish or Greek, who've never shared each other's cultures, many of which, of course, much of which is very similar. I am coming to Varosha Famagusta, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm just trying to set this in context. I should have declared an interest, by the way. I'm an honorary citizen of Morphu, and I visit the Morphu, March Towards Morphu, on an annual basis at their invitation. And I have been doing this, and I have been working on the Cyprus problem, as it's known, since 1983, when I first came into this House, which is 32 years. And I have to say to the Honourable Lady, I haven't seen a great deal of progress. But there is an opportunity, a window of opportunity now. The now leader of Northern Cyprus, Mustafa Akinci, used to be the mayor of the northern part of Nicosia, when Lelos Dimitriadis was the mayor of Nicosia. The reason that's important is because while everybody else was fighting and not getting on and posturing, Lelos Dimitriadis and Mustafa Akinci got together in dead of night, literally in dead of night, and planned the sewers for the whole of Nicosia. Because patently you can't have two sewage systems for one major city. And they planned the water systems, and they even planned the road system so that one day, looking downstream, when there would be a settlement, the roads would actually join up. And they will. And I don't believe that Mustafa Akinci, that man who is capable of that degree of foresight and cooperation, is not capable of reaching a deal with Nikos Anastasiades, the current President of the Republic of Cyprus. It can happen. And it should happen. And in the interests of the peace of the whole of the Middle East and the whole of Europe, it must happen. But for it to happen, unfortunately, Turkey has got to agree. Now, recently I've seen the welcome mat put out for Turkey. For very obvious reasons, we need Turkey at the moment. Turkey is taking thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees from Syria. And they're looking for help, and rightly so. But the idea that you can fast-track Turkey into a European Union without settling the Cyprus problem, I'm afraid, is a non-starter. It is simply a red line. Or shall I say a green line. And we have to, collectively, and my honourable friend on the front bench, in fact my honourable friends on both front benches, have to use their best endeavours to seek to make sure that Turkey comes to the negotiating table and does the deal. Yes, the Honourable Lady was right, and my honourable friends have been right to say that without the settlement of the property issues, there will be no settlement. Without the right of the freedom of movement, there will be no settlement. Without the removal of Turkish troops from northern Cyprus, there will be no settlement. Imagine if we had said, after the war, we're going to keep troops there in perpetuity. How would that feel? Why should the Cypriots, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, why should they settle for the presence of foreign troops, one foreign troop, on their land without invitation? If they're there by invitation, that's a different matter. And I believe that the Greek troops and the Turkish troops have to leave the island. The rest gets harder. The property is very difficult indeed, because much of land has been built on. Who owns those houses? We know who owns the land, but who now owns the houses? It's not going to be easy. I think it's going to take money, it's going to take time, but it has to happen. The bottom line is a bi-communal, bi-zonal federation. That's the goal. It's achievable. But as we say to our Cypriot friends, some of whom are here tonight, we are with you, and we will stay with you for as long as it takes.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I too join with others in congratulating my honourable friend from Enfield and Southgate, not only in securing this debate, but in his excellent leadership of the delegation which visited Cyprus a few days ago. For me, it was my first visit, not just to Famagusta, but to Cyprus itself. It's a beautiful island, and the beach at Famagusta runs Cleethorpes a close second. I give way to my honourable friend.
Does my honourable friend not believe that South East Cornwall comes above Cleethorpes?
No. I'm afraid I cannot agree with my honourable friend, as I'm sure she would anticipate. Madam Deputy Speaker, as always in countries where there is conflict and division, it is the ordinary people who suffer. And we had the privilege of meeting a number of those over the last few days. And those who suffer what has already been described by my honourable friend from Southend, having witnessed the desecration of their churches and the vandalism of their graveyards, leaves a permanent scar on them, and we must do all we can to retrieve that situation. It's not just, of course, damaging to those individuals, but it's also damaging to the heritage and culture of the Cypriot island and people themselves. I won't detain the House unnecessarily, because my honourable friend from Southend has focused on the point about the Committee of Missing People that I wanted to highlight. It was the Second time I've witnessed visiting a similar place to we visited on, I think it was Friday, when we
saw the DNA. My honourable friend from Beckenham intervened early, and it was with him that I visited a similar work being done in Bosnia at this time last year, and it's harrowing, and the meticulous work of those involved in it deserves recognition. As my honourable friend from Southend pointed out, very modest resources are needed to maintain and enhance this work, and I would hope that the government would look favourable on that request. Indeed, it need not necessarily be taxpayers' money. It can be donations in kind from the private sector, and I'm sure if the work was highlighted to a greater extent, donations would be forthcoming. The other point I think that meant a great deal to me was actually visiting the former Nicosia airport, because it gives you a real it highlights how the area is frozen in time. Yes, sir.
Just before he moves on to that, in terms of donations in kind, you may recall that Honourable Friend mentioned for Tamworth, was it, who mentioned the potential of using the goodwill of a constituent of the Honourable Friend for Burton, and there may be the opportunity of a digger, an extra digger. The digger is perhaps one of the most expensive parts of the kit to try and find missing persons. That may be a particularly useful in-kind donation.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and he highlights exactly the point that I was seeking to make. I'm sure, as I say, if we, to a greater extent, were to make known what is required, I'm sure donations would be forthcoming. Returning to the airport, as it gives you a real impression of being frozen in time, as do the empty and derelict buildings in Famagusta, for example. I happily give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I speak as someone that used to fly from Nicosia Airport, so I'm that old. I also used to be on the beaches of Famagusta as a boy. It is actually crucially important that we get both areas functioning again. And in that respect, I think the United Nations, who have manned the Green Line for so long, have done so well on it, could well be redeployed to help with Famagusta and open up the airport. And I think that would be something to stop them doing the sterility which they're faced with for the last 40 years.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I entirely agree. The island is heavily dependent on tourism, and every opportunity to enhance that would surely be welcome. And here at the airport, as elsewhere, we saw bullet-scarred buildings, which are a constant reminder of what happened 41 years ago. Madam Deputy Speaker, what purpose does the continuation of this division serve? I would urge our government to do everything possible to encourage, support the Cypriot people. I give way.
Thank you very much for giving way. Cyprus is a fantastic country, and I've been on delegations and holidays here. Fantastic country. But the Turkish government continually has ignored UN Security Council resolutions on peace. Can the honourable gentleman say what additional pressure can the UK government put on the Turkish government to try to bring this dispute to an end which is satisfactory to everyone?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that intervention. I would hope, actually, that it's the Minister who's going to enlighten us as to what additional help, support and encouragement can take place. But it is entirely true that it is the Turkish government that have seemingly been the blockage to this for so many years. But as my honourable friend from Southend West said a few minutes ago, if ever there was the possibility of a settlement, it did seem now that it's within our grasp, and anything the British government can do to help and achieve that must... I give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. Would he not agree that there were in fact two midwives to this particular situation? One of them, of course, was Turkey, and I certainly support the motion. and its condemnation of the actions of the Turkish government. However, there was also Greece. And in 1974, Greece's militarism was very much part of destabilising Archbishop Makarios and introducing a really quite unpleasant military junta, fortunately, for a short period of time, but nevertheless. So one can perhaps have a little bit of sympathy for Turkey, and so far in this debate it's been rather one-sided.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and yes, of course, it takes two parties, two to tango, as it were. There must be the willingness on both sides to come to an agreement. And I conclude by urging yet again the government to do everything. I think my honourable friend is looking to intervene just as I was concluding. But
I'm grateful for the intervention, and while there is some history about Turkish troops actually invading the island, that was 36 years ago. It's time for them to go now. But even their behaviour on the visit that we undertook, well, we were followed by the security forces who photographed us, sought our names and determined when we were leaving and what we were doing, shows that the Turkish government haven't really changed.
I thank my honourable friend, and yes, there was a sort of slightly sinister feel to some parts of our trip as a result of being followed and photographed by the Turkish authorities. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I do apologise for not being here at the opening of the debate. I had other duties elsewhere. But I accept the point he made a few moments ago, that for the first time in 41 years, a settlement looks closer than it's ever been. But in order for such a settlement to take place, won't he accept that there has to be some recognition on both sides, that there have been failings on both sides, before anyone can move forward?
I thank the honourable gentleman, and yes, of course, as I mentioned in response to my honourable friend a few moments ago, there clearly have been failings on both sides, but it takes two to come together and bring this situation to a conclusion, and we are now within it's now within our grasp, and we should do everything possible we can to achieve that. Thank you.
Pat McFadden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and let me begin by congratulating the Honourable Member for Enfield, Southgate, and his co-signatories for tabling this debate. The division of Cyprus for over 40 years is often referred to as a frozen conflict. The motion before us tonight gives some sense of how long this situation has lasted for. It talks of the UN resolutions, the high-level agreements which have been reached, the efforts which have been made, and as the motion says, all of this effort is aimed at a comprehensive settlement, which is the phrase continually used, of the division of the island. And the aim, as the motion again says, is for a bi-communal, bi-zonal federation with political equality guaranteed for the whole population of the island. Yes?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd just like to put on record that although the conflict may have been frozen for a very long time, one of the reasons it was frozen was because of the actions of so many United Nations troops on the Green Line, stopping the conflict breaking out again. It may have been sterile, it may be boring for those troops, but my goodness, they've actually stopped people dying.
The Honourable Member makes a very good point, and I suppose is gently reminding us that a frozen conflict is better than an unfrozen conflict without a settlement. And the frozen nature of the conflict is perhaps at its most graphic in the city of Famagusta and specifically Varosha, where homes, hotels, other buildings have lain dormant for 40 years, trapped in a specific moment in time. Buildings still standing, but devoid of the people and the changes that give a city life year after year. Overgrown with vegetation and gradually rotting away. It's no accident that the term ghost town has been used to describe this both before tonight and in tonight's debate. So it is of course right that the city and its properties be returned to their rightful owners. And when people left, they thought they'd be able to return within days or perhaps weeks. And they now find that they've had no access to their homes, businesses, and other places of real importance to them for over 40 years. And people lost their houses, land, money, access to places of worship. It's no wonder that this enforced absence is a source of such heartbreak and sorrow to all of those affected. And they are right not only to hope, but to expect that they will be able to return. The broader question is how this happens and its relationship to a wider settlement of the Cyprus division and the Cyprus issues. And on that point, as again has been mentioned several times in the debate tonight, the omens are better than they have been for some time. Both Mr Anastasiadis and Mr Akinci seem genuinely committed to a settlement, and optimism is at a higher level than for many years. The prospect for progress on this agenda seems stronger now than in the past, and I'm sure that the whole House hopes that that applies to the wider issues, including this issue of Famagusta, which we are focused on
tonight. Now, the Cyprus later this week, the Honourable Member for Enfield Southgate asked the Minister a few questions could add to his list, as it were. Could the Minister tell us what is the Government's agenda for this visit later this week, and what more the UK Government can do as a friend of Cyprus to encourage momentum and ultimately agreement in the talks? Given the more positive political atmosphere which exists today compared to the past, how does the Minister see the Government using its position as a guarantor to press for a settlement which leads to the reunification of the island as set out in the various UN resolutions which have been adopted? Does the Minister believe that in this process, Mr Akinci, in whom a great deal of hope has been vested and who represents Northern Cyprus, is free to make an agreement if he so wishes? And can he say more about what he believes Turkey's role is in this process? This is particularly important on this issue of Famagusta, because it's important to mention that this frozen area of Varosha is not in the hands of the Turkish Cypriots, it's in the hands of the Turkish military. And therefore it is important that we consider this not only in terms of the people on the island, but the Turkish military's role too. Could the Minister also comment on what the relationship is between this process and the other issues which have been raised tonight, which are under discussion between Turkey and the European Union, specifically the huge refugee problem which is affecting both Turkey and the European Union, and the question of accession to the EU at any point in the future? How possible is it to make progress on these other issues while the issue in Cyprus remains as it is, and what is their effect on the process taking place in Cyprus itself? Madam Deputy Speaker, there is much that has taken place in recent months and days that is a cause for grief and heartbreak at the human level and in huge concern at the political level. We had a statement earlier today where the House set out its views on the terrible events which took place in Paris a few days ago. We have talked understandably of a generational struggle against Islamist extremism. The world has failed to find a solution to the terrible war in Syria, which has been unfolding for years and is driving much of the refugee problem facing Europe. Yet on this issue, on this Cyprus issue, there is grounds for hope and optimism. Inevitably, those grounds will be tempered with caution, given how many setbacks there have been over the years. And the Honourable Member referred to his involvement for decades in this issue. But as we know from our own experience, making peace is hugely dependent on leadership. And among both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots,
We have leadership in place now which seems committed to finding a way forward. So we on this side of the House will support their efforts, and we hope that the UK Government plays as positive a role as possible so that this conflict, which I've referred to as frozen, can be resolved and that the island of Cyprus can be unified on the basis of mutual respect for every part of the population of the island.
Tobias Ellwood.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and could I congratulate the Backbench Business Committee for taking time to have this important debate. And can I begin by apologising for the absence of the Europe Minister, who has another engagement away from the House. I will do my best to answer the questions from right honourable and honourable members, but any questions that I'm unable to answer, I will certainly pass on to him for him to write to honourable members. It's also been mentioned that the Foreign Secretary will be visiting the country this week, in fact, so this debate very much is fortuitous in that sense. But can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Enfield Southgate, on securing this important debate at this time. It is a country that, whilst it isn't my brief, I deal with Middle East, North Africa most of the time, it is a country I'm very, very familiar with. I served there as an officer with the Royal Green Jackets. I do remember old stomping grounds of Nicosia, Larnaca, Paphos. I've been up to the Panhandle and also to Belape Monastery in Kyrenia. It is a truly beautiful country. Not only that, steeped in history. We've gone back to when it gained its independence, but of course it has a place in Greek mythology, birthplace of Aphrodite, I think, and Adonis. I think the sculptor Pygmalion also came from there. It is truly a remarkable place indeed. I have very fond memories. It's where I learnt to fly as a pilot. It's also where I learnt to parachute. A very beautiful place indeed, and it is a place which is associated with fun, with enjoyment, but there is a serious element which has been highlighted today. Back in the time that I was there, in the 1990s, it was actually two other protagonists that were taking this debate across. This was Denktash and Clerides, who were the two leaders of the day, debating the very same matters that we are debating at this moment. And so there is a sense of frustration which has been aired by honourable and right honourable members as to how long it has taken to try and resolve this issue, which is, at the end of the day, an important part of Europe. My honourable friend mentioned the British interest as well, of course, a historical interest, a commercial interest, not only with tourism, culturally, but also security interest as well, with the sovereign bases that I had the honour to serve with. And also mention was made of the RAF and the role that they are playing, not least with the challenges that we find in the Middle East. This is an important strategic relationship that we have with the country. He mentioned his letter that he received from the Prime Minister, and I can certainly very much agree, as you'd expect me to agree with my Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, on his commitment to a bicameral solution, supporting UN resolutions 550 and 789, and working towards that important comprehensive settlement. My honourable friend for Hendon spoke about very briefly.
I'm very grateful to the Minister. Would he agree with me also that in order to make progress on that proposal, it's necessary to recognise that there are legitimate grievances on the side of the Northern Cypriots that has to be addressed if they're going to feel comfortable with that sort of settlement?
Well, I'll certainly come on to those particular grievances and indeed what role Britain can actually play as I make progress. But my honourable friend for Hendon, I was just saying, made the importance and remarks of the empty beaches which he saw on this, what sounds like to me quite an amazing visit by other honourable members, honourable friends as well. And also the enormous potential for tourism to fill those beaches. That's exactly what I think all sides would want. My honourable friend for Southend West did not want to dwell on the past. He wanted to look at the future, but we certainly must learn from the past, but also stress the importance of trade. The honourable member for Hornsey and Wood Green I was about to say lots of nice things about her, but I see she's not in her place. But I will say that although she's not been to Cyprus herself, she wasn't on this visit, she clearly has a major diaspora in her constituency, and I think the fact that she came here today, she is representing her constituents well. And she mentioned the desire of an older generation of Cypriots still waiting for a solution and how frustrating it is for them. So we do hope that we will make progress. My right honourable friend for North Thanet, can I welcome him to his new role? And I think he's got some big shoes to fill, if I can put it politely in that way. He stressed that there is a window of opportunity arising. I think my honourable friend for Enfield Southgate talked about the stars being aligned. If I may correct him, I think it's the planets that are aligned rather than the stars itself. But nevertheless, the moment very much is in front of us, and that's why it's very pertinent that the Foreign Secretary will be visiting in the very, very near future.
On the point, I was just, in terms of the stars alignment, I was just simply repeating what the Foreign Secretary said in the House. But what the Foreign Secretary, no doubt deliberately, was referring was the same quotation that was referred ahead of the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. Those same phrases was used to make the point that could be at the cusp of another historic agreement.
I agree. I hope that's absolutely right, which is why the visit of the Foreign Secretary is so pertinent this week itself, and I'm sure he'll be reading Hansard to make sure he's fully a grasp as to what has been said in the House today. My old friend for Cleethorpes actually used the phrase, "What purpose does this division continue to serve?" And I absolutely agree with him. It serves no purpose whatsoever. Everybody benefits by finding a solution here today. So, first of all, can I welcome the support expressed in the motion for the comprehensive settlement of the Cyprus problem. Cyprus has been divided for too long, and under the courageous leadership of the President Anastasiades and Mr. Ejunke, we may now have that opportunity to secure a just and lasting settlement. I can assure the House that the UK will remain a strong supporter of the two communities' efforts to secure a settlement. We will do whatever we can to help them reunite Cyprus. I give way.
Thanks very much for giving way. And I understand what the Minister said before about perhaps other people in the department have got more expertise in Cyprus than he actually might have. But could he say what actual powers has the UK government got in terms of the guarantor of power for Cyprus?
Well, again, he needs to allow me to develop my argument, if I may. I will come to those points and the role that Britain seeks to provide in this important task in finding a solution here. We should be clear on the benefits of a lasting settlement, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are clear benefits for Cyprus, for the region, and indeed for the United Kingdom. 80,000 British nationals live in Cyprus, and 900,000 visit the country every single year. A reunited Cyprus would unlock significant economic benefits through increased opportunities for trade, investment, and indeed tourism, including in the area of Russia around Famagusta. The respective Peace Research Institute of Oslo has forecasted that the peace dividend from a Cyprus settlement would amount to €20 billion over the next 20 years, and it would add an average of 2.8% in real terms GDP growth every single year. These figures alone make a powerful case for the importance of securing a settlement. Beyond the economic benefits, a settlement in Cyprus would help to advance regional stability. Cyprus is already a beacon of stability in a challenging region, but a settlement would reinforce the island's security, and it would open up the possibility of new energy and economic partnerships in the region. And it would bring new momentum to Turkey's EU accession process. In all of these areas, there are opportunities for the United Kingdom. On Turkey specifically, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is clear that Turkey remains an important part of reaching a solution. And we welcome Turkey's support for a settlement, and public statements on that from President Erdogan and Prime Minister Davutoglu have been important to build support for a settlement. Turkey's recent agreement to give the Committee for Missing Persons in Cyprus access to 30 sites, which has been mentioned by honourable members, controlled by the Turkish military, was a very helpful step indeed. And we welcome the positive response from the Republic of Cyprus to that end and hope that parties can build on this to generate even more confidence in the settlement process. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful indeed to the Minister. I've listened intently to the debate, and of course there are memories stirred about the past in Northern Ireland. One suggestion I would make to the Minister is that, in fact, the IRA murdered and disappeared a number of people 30, 40 years ago. And a very distinguished forensics expert has helped identify some of the remains of the disappeared. We haven't found them all, sadly. And also helped out in Bosnia. I wonder if the government would please make a point of involving that very distinguished lady forensics expert in identifying those found in graves in Cyprus.
She makes an important point about the reconciliation, and her words are now on the record, and I will have discussions with the Europe Minister about this very issue. But I'm pleased to say that progress has been made on this, as already mentioned by other honourable members in the Chamber. Securing a sustainable Cyprus settlement, therefore, remains important internationally, regionally, given the opportunities and security threats, but above all for the people of Cyprus itself, stand most to gain from the social, economic and security benefits that a lasting settlement would bring. The UK remains firmly focused on supporting the people of the island to find a solution. Our approach, Madam Deputy Speaker, has three elements. Firstly, we maintain strong links in Cyprus with both communities, and we support strongly the efforts of the President and Mr Ajengi to reach a lasting settlement through the UN-led negotiations. And as the Foreign Secretary, who has already been commenting, will be visiting this week, confirmed to the House in June, the UK has made a generous offer to cede nearly half of the territory of the sovereign base areas to Cyprus in the event of a settlement. We also support... I do.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I also place on record the immense help the sovereign base areas have had over the 40 years to try and keep stability, not just from the fact that when the invasion occurred in 1974, Turkish troops were stopped by the presence of the sovereign base area. We're ceding back land to the Republic of Cyprus, but those two areas of British territory provide huge stability to the island in security terms as well.
Well, following independence, Madam Deputy Speaker, the sovereign base areas have played an important part in the history of that country and continue to do so. And I'm pleased to see that we are also using that as a method of which to encourage a settlement to be reached. But we also support practical initiatives to help build trust between the communities, notably through our support for the excellent work of the bicommunal Chambers of Commerce. The Minister for Europe was very pleased to host an event at the Foreign Office in March that enabled the Chambers to highlight the value of bicommunal work and the economic benefits of a settlement. At the regional level, we discuss with other guarantor powers, Turkey and Greece, on how best to support a solution. And on the question of security and guarantees, our position is clear. We are not seeking a specific role for the UK. Rather, we are ready to consider whatever arrangements the sides can agree to enable their communities to feel secure. Finally, we engage with other international partners, including through the EU and the UN, to encourage them to support the efforts of the President and Mr sorry, it's a really difficult name, Mr. Akunje, As the Foreign Secretary has made clear, the UK will continue to do all it can to help sides reunite their island. Now, with respect to the specific issue of Famagusta, I understand the strength of the feeling about Varosha. The present state of Varosha reflects the consequences of the continued division of Cyprus, and we fully support all relevant Security Council resolutions, including Security Council Resolution 550 from 1984 and 789 from 1992. We have raised this issue with the Turkish Cypriots and with the Turkish authorities, and the government remains convinced that ultimately a comprehensive settlement is the best chance of resolving these complex issues. So we remain focused on supporting the efforts of the two leaders to secure a settlement. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, this debate has underlined the depth of the ties between the United Kingdom and Cyprus. It has demonstrated that it is in the UK's national interest to help the Cypriots to reach a lasting settlement. But that will require bold decisions from both communities in the weeks and months ahead. Both the President and Mr. Akunja already demonstrate that they can provide the strong and determined leadership required to secure a historic agreement. The government is cautiously optimistic that a solution may be within reach, and certainly many people think there is now a chance the like of which has not been seen for decades, and we urge both sides to seize this opportunity. Cypriots of both communities want to live and prosper together in peace. As they strive for a lasting solution, we will continue our active support in Cyprus, Ankara, Athens, Brussels, New York and beyond. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am grateful to the Backbench Business Committee for making this time for this debate and give us the opportunity to discuss these important issues. Thank you.
David Burrowes to wind up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank all our members for contributing to this important and timely debate. I thank Shadow Minister and Minister for their broad support for the principles behind this motion and the powerful case there is for comprehensive settlement. The economic benefit the Minister referred to, the regional stability, bringing in other partnerships and the momentum that is there through Mustafa Akinci and Nikos Anastasiades. And we must give them all support, and this motion does that. We've heard many voices in the debate. We've heard 7 honourable members from Gower, South Wiltshire, Bolton, South East Cornwall, Beckenham, Knowsley and Wansbeck intervening and showing their support for this motion, together with 5 honourable friends and members. The honourable member for Hornsey and Green felt left out from the delegation. That is because it was a Conservative Friends of Cyprus delegation. She's welcome to apply, but nevertheless she can perhaps run an all-party group under the chairmanship of my honourable friend, a member for North Thanet, who spoke about the generational problem and also the hope in Mustafa Akinci that he has the skills to work with Nikos Anastasiades to really make the most of this chance of a decades. My honourable friend for Hendon spoke about of international law should be equally applied everywhere, whether it's in Israel and indeed in Cyprus as well, and the need to ensure that we never forget the important issue of justice that must be dealt with. And this motion does seek to do that. My honourable friend for Cleethorpes also made mention, not least, of the old Nicosia airport. That is a horrifying example of the scar of division and occupation, and we must do more. My honourable friend for Southend West said he'd heard it all before, but that this motion does allow us to take a stage further. And that is the case because since 40,000 Famagustans, many of them who will be up in the gallery, who fled their homes after the relentless bombardment, and they left Famagusta looted, then looted and left empty to decay. I've been given a whole set of photographs here showing its former glory, that we must work hard to seek its return. There's been a long wait for them for justice. UN Security Council resolutions 550 in 1984, then 789 in 1992. Then there's been various proposals through various leaders of the communities and negotiations. Then there's been petitions, not least the one 50,000 Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriots that forms the basis of this debate. Then there's been a European Union declaration. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a resolution of this House that does make it very clear that I hope we will receive unanimous support across the House, that we want this motion, which is about the return of Famagusta, it is about supporting a comprehensive settlement. We want to ensure that this is the very last time we have to have a debate and such a resolution, that we do reach that settlement, which is for the good of all Cypriots. I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.